Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Well, many of you have asked me to do this video, so today I'm going to discuss the best automatic cars you can buy for £5,000. There are lots of people out there who only have an automatic licence, and to be fair, I totally understand. Most of the time having a manual car is a chore. 99% of the time you're just sat in traffic with a heavy clutch, so what's the point? Also, there are lots of people who have come to the UK either as a student or for work reasons who are from countries where a manual is quite rare. Places such as the USA, Australia, Canada. So naturally they try and seek out a car with only two pedals. It makes sense. But there is a bit of a problem here in the UK. Automatics are quite rare. The thing you've got to realise is here in Europe, manuals are just much more popular. In fact, popular is probably the wrong word, but they're certainly more common. So in order to get an auto, you normally have to go for a bigger, more luxurious car. You know, something that's automatic as standard, something usually with a bigger engine, but that means higher running costs. Most small automatics are those horrible semi-autos which just aren't reliable at all. The cars that I'm going to recommend in today's video are automatics that I would actually go out and buy with my own money. You know, for example, if a family member asked me for an automatic, these are the ones that I would point them in the direction of. Quick tip, you want to avoid anything French or Italian because they're usually semi-autos and they always break, and when they do, they're barely worth repairing, so just steer clear. The difference is, if you see a gear lever like this, that's usually a semi-auto. Whereas if you see a gear lever like this, that usually means it's a true auto and they're much more reliable. Right, before I do that, I've got to say a big thank you to today's video sponsor, HelloFresh. Now, I'm a rubbish cook, I mean really terrible. I struggle with toast. And every night when I finish work, I go home and I find myself eating the same thing over and over again. It's boring. But thankfully, HelloFresh have changed that for me. It's really easy and convenient. You simply subscribe to them, choose the meals you want to eat throughout the week, and then they deliver to you a box full of fresh ingredients and instructions right to your door. It couldn't be easier. All I do when I get home is take the recipe card out for whichever meal I fancy and then follow the steps. It's almost like building flat pack furniture, you just can't go wrong with it. And within 20 minutes, I've got a delicious, nutritious meal. I've also found that it's really good for portion control, so it keeps me at a healthy weight. And the best thing is, every night when I go home, I don't have to think, what am I going to have tonight? I just ran out of options, because that never happens. Before I found HelloFresh, I just found myself stuck in a rut eating the same thing over and over and over again. But now that just doesn't happen. Nowadays, I always get something interesting and tasty. It's a real game changer. The best thing is, it's always interesting, creative stuff that I would never think about cooking for myself. And even I don't ruin it. It's really straightforward, just follow the steps. If you'd like to try it, use the promo code HighPeakAuto60 and you'll get 60% off your first box and then 25% off for the first 2 months. I'll leave the link below in the video description. It's as simple as that. Right, back to automatic cars for under £5,000. I think rather than do a countdown like top 10, top 8, all that sort of stuff, I'm just going to open the Auto Trader app and go through it with you. That way we won't miss any. Right, so we're going to select what we're looking for. So any make, any model. What I would recommend is going for a petrol or a petrol hybrid. I'd avoid diesels because for that kind of money you're just going to encounter turbo issues, EGR issues, DPF issues, so steer clear. So gearbox, automatic, fuel type, petrol and petrol hybrid. Price up to £5,000. So straight away we've gone from 500,000 cars on offer to just 5,000 cars. This is what I'm talking about, they're quite rare. So we'll start off. Now, XM, no. Alfa Romeo, no, you want to avoid those. Audi, you'd have thought with Audi you'd get some decent German build quality, but you want to avoid those as well because they're usually twin clutch gearboxes or CVT gearboxes, and either way you want to avoid them. So avoid that. BMW, right. So if you want an automatic BMW that's petrol, I would recommend either going for a 1 Series or a 3 Series or possibly a 5 Series. So let's have a look at 3 Series. You'll get something like this, 2006 320 petrol, so that's a 2 litre petrol automatic. Something like that wouldn't be a bad idea. If you've got £3,000 to spend, you've got quite a presentable car there. Or a 1 Series, so you could get something like a 120. The gearboxes aren't bad on these, they're generally quite reliable. Let's keep looking down the list. So Cadillac, nope. Chevrolet, no. Daewoo, no. Citroen, definitely not. Chrysler, no. Daihatsu, no. Daimler, no. Dodge, no. Honda, right, let's look at Honda. So, something like a petrol Accord would be good, but the only thing is they're quite big engines. Straight away you're either into a 2 litre or a 2.4, so they will be a little bit more thirsty. But the gearboxes are a proper automatic, and they shouldn't give you much trouble. I mean, look at that, for example, 3995 is a 2.4 VTEC EX. I think that's quite a nice car. It'll certainly be reliable. You've got leather, heated seats, sunroof, sat-nav. It's a lot of car for the money, that. Or something like a CRV, you can't really go wrong with a CRV, but you're into higher running costs. So the road tax will be £365 a year. Realistically, a 2-litre petrol auto CRV will only do 23, 24 miles per gallon around town, so it won't be brilliant. But they're roomy and reliable. Something like this, 2005 2-litre petrol sport. It's even ULEZ compliant, so if you live in the London area, that wouldn't be a bad option. Bit of a manky steering wheel there, but not too bad. The Honda Jazz Automatic's usually quite good, but it is a bit of an old age pensioner's car. It isn't something I'd want to run around in myself. And also, the automatic gearboxes do need a service. When they get to a certain age, when you set off, they kind of flutter. So you need to get that flushed out and then serviced. You would have thought the Civic would be a good idea, wouldn't you? Well, the trouble is, the early Civics are because they use a proper automatic gearbox. Let me demonstrate, let me show you. So that era of Civic is really good. They have a timing belt which needs to be replaced, not a chain. But the gearbox is strong. So it's the old shape Civic. It's a little bit rusty, that to be fair, but it is £1,200. And it's got a proper automatic gearbox. The shape after this, you know, the shape that looks like a stormtrooper's helmet, that one, that has something called an I-shift gearbox, which is a semi-auto, and you need to avoid those. Have a look at this, let me show you what I mean. That, avoid that like the plague. It will just cause you nothing but headaches. They did also do that shape Civic with a proper auto box, so you need to try and find one with a gear lever like that, which means it's got a proper automatic gearbox. That shouldn't break. What else? So Ford. Now Ford's not a bad option. So you either need to look for something like a Fiesta or a Focus or a Mondeo if you want something bigger, but avoid the later ones because it's a proper minefield this. The later ones have a power shift gearbox, which is a twin clutch gearbox, and they're nothing but grief. So what I would recommend is going for something like an 06, 07 Focus. Let me try and find one. Like this, for example, 1.6 gear, so it's got velour seats and air conditioning, electric windows, all that sort of stuff. And it is a proper true automatic. With that kind of car, you can't really go wrong. If you're looking for a Fiesta, then again, make sure it's got a proper auto box because some have a, what was it called, DuraShift? DuraShift, there you go. Again, this is a semi-auto. When you see car adverts and they're called something like DuraShift or PowerShift or something kind of Sensotronic or whatever like that, it usually means they're a semi-auto gearbox and you need to avoid them. Let me show you again. Once you know what you're looking for, it will be quite clear. Look at the gearbox on that. So that is a semi-auto. It's only got 2 pedals, but it's an automated manual. And they're weak. Well, that's cool, isn't it? Look at that Ford Explorer. God knows why I'm drawn to that. Anyway, moving on. Fiat, no, because they're all semi-autos. So you want to avoid those. Hyundai, no. Infiniti, no. Jaguar, you can't go wrong really with something like an X-Type or an S-Type, but it will have a big engine, usually a V6, so you'll be into 18, 20 miles per gallon. Jeep, you're into higher running costs, but you could get something like a Cherokee. Kia, they tend to do a decent automatic gearbox, so any of those really, something like a Kia Ceed Auto, you can't really go wrong with something like a 1.6 petrol auto Ceed. It isn't the most exciting looking car, but it'll certainly be reliable and dependable. Or if you've got a very large head, you could buy a Venga. Basically the same as a Ceed, but you get much more headroom. Perfect if your name's Humpty Dumpty. Or if you want a small little runaround, then you can't go wrong either with a little Kia Picanto. They do rust though, so watch out for rust, particularly underneath. That one looks a bit scruffy to be honest, but it's £2,500 and it has a proper automatic gearbox. Lexus. Right, you can't go wrong with something like a Lexus IS 250. Again, they're a little bit on the thirsty side because it's got a 2.5 litre petrol engine. But they're a really nice luxurious car. I've had loads of these and I really rate them. They're not the quickest and it'll only do 20 miles per gallon, but really stylish, really comfortable, and the automatic gearboxes are very strong. If you want something a bit bigger, then you could go for a GS 300. I mean, look at that, that's great value, I think. It's quite a good looking car, perfectly comfortable, reliable, but it's a 3 litre V6. So you're into probably 18 miles per gallon around town. So it's just whether you can stomach that. But a lot of car for the money, that. Moving on to another manufacturer. So Lincoln, I don't think you want an old Navigator, do you? MG, certainly not. This one's a step speed, so again it's a semi-auto. No, as if that car's not bad enough. Mini, definitely not. Avoid auto minis, especially the early Coopers. They're really, really bad. Mazda, let's have a look. Something like a Mazda 3, they're quite good. They do rust though, so watch out for rust. But, I mean, have a look at that. That one's done 130, so the mileage is a bit on the high side. It's 2008, 1.6 Takara. I do rate the Mazda 3. I think it's quite a good looking car. And again, a proper automatic, you shouldn't have much trouble with that. And for 1995, I think that's a bit of a bargain, that. You could get something like a Mazda 6 if you want something a bit bigger. This is a bit sort of Mondeo sized, Honda Accord sized. Again, I think these are great value. Look at that one, that's a 2005, done 92. And it's £1,695. It's because nobody in the UK wants that kind of car, because everyone's concerned about fuel costs and everything else. But it is a proper, true auto. So, Mercedes-Benz, they do a decent auto box. Oh, we've got plenty of choice. Right, you don't want an A-class, you don't want a B-class, because, although I've just said they do a decent auto box, the B-class is the exception. So you want something like a C-class. Now you can't go wrong, you don't want that banana-coloured one. But you can't go wrong with something like a C180 compressor. Avant-garde SE, look at that. Still looks quite classy, proper automatic. That one's quite dented actually, but it is cheap. So that era of Mercedes, you can't really go wrong with. Or if you want something a bit sportier, you could go for something like a CLK. Now, this era of CLK, I think will be a future classic, but that's a separate video, I suppose. I just think, how timeless is that? Polish the headlamps, and you've got an elegant looking coupe. Now, if you go for something like the CLK 240, that one uses a 2.6 V6, and it's quite a thirsty, slow car, that. But if you don't do many miles, then that might not put you off. What else do Merc do? An E-Class? You could go for something like an E200. E200 petrol, that wouldn't be a bad idea. Oh, look at that, E500. Why am I drawn to that straight away? A 20-year-old E500 avant-garde. What am I going to do with that? Idiot. There you go, look at that. E200 1.8 petrol compressor, done 94. What an awful lot of car for £2,500 that is. Proper automatic. That will drive very, very nicely. Right. Kimas. Microcar, no. Mitsubishi, I think this is a wasted exercise. Colt, no. Grandis, no. Lancer, no. Pajero, no, no, no. Certainly not an Outlander. The Outlander is one of my least favourite cars of all time. Nissan, you want to avoid auto Nissans because they use a CVT box and they're not very reliable. Porsche, for £5,000, you're just going to get a headache. Peugeot, definitely not. Perodua, no. Proton, no. Renault, no. Rover, nope. Saab. Right, now this era of Saab will be a General Motors box, so that shouldn't be the end of the world. I mean, look at that. £2,500. I know it's the old shape one, but I think that looks classy. Proper enthusiast car, that. That will be quite nice to drive, that. Why do I instantly want an old 9.3 now? So that wouldn't be a bad option. Something like a 1.8 petrol Saab 9.3 or a 2-litre Saab 9.5 perhaps. What else is there? See what I mean about choice there? There isn't an awful lot for £5,000 if you need an automatic. You want to avoid Seat because they're owned by Volkswagen, Audi, and it'll either be a semi-auto or a twin clutch or a CVT. Same with Skoda. Subaru, they use a CVT usually, so you want to avoid those. SsangYong, no. Smart, I wouldn't have thought so really. Suzuki, right, something like a Suzuki Swift would be good, but again, watch out because some of them are semi-auto. So you generally want to go for something like the 1.5 because that should be a proper auto. Let's have a look. I think the 1.3 are a semi-auto, there you go, and the 1.5 is a full. How much of my brain is wasted with knowledge like that? So you can't really go wrong with something like that. If you want a small little city car, and it must be auto, something like a Suzuki Swift. Wagoner, like my grandmother used to have. Does look a bit like Postman Pat's van, doesn't it? God bless her. No, okay, no, nope, nope. So you are really limited for choice. Toyota. If you want something boring but dependable, something like an old Corolla. I mean, look at that. 2006 colour collection Corolla 1.6 VVT. It'll probably burn a bit of oil, but it isn't the end of the world. It'll still start on the key. This one's retrofitted sat-nav, but it should have a proper, true, there you go, bingo, proper auto. You can't really go wrong with that. That will run and run and run and run. You could go for an Auris, but I wouldn't, because they tend to be, there you go, it's called a multi-mode and it's a semi-auto, and they're hateful. They really are a pitiful gearbox. People buy them thinking it's a Toyota and it'll be reliable, and they'll have nothing but issues. Fun fact. What else do they do that I could recommend? Same with the Igo. The Igo uses a semi-auto box. You could get something like a Prius. For £5,000, you're going to get something like an 06, 07 Prius. RAV4 you could get. They have a proper automatic gearbox, but again, you're going to be into slightly higher running costs, and watch out for rust. You could get an early Yaris, like a Mark 1 like that, because they used a proper auto gearbox. Let me try and show you a picture. There you go, proper automatic, old school Japanese box. But if you find one like this shape, the newer shape, the Mark II, then you're out of luck, because it's a multi-mode, which is a semi-auto box, which is hateful, as we've established. That leaves the Vs, Vauxhall, Volkswagen and Volvo. I would avoid Volkswagen, because they use a DSG gearbox, which is a twin clutch box, which for £5,000 you'll have got one that hasn't been maintained well and will cause you nothing but grief. So you want to avoid those, unless you can find like an old Mark IV. If you're on a limited budget and you've only got 1,500 quid or £2,000 to spend, something like a Mark IV Golf automatic uses a proper old-fashioned auto box. I've had one of these and they're okay. The later Mark V used a DSG, so avoid those. Onto Vauxhall, you could get something like an Astra like this, a 1.8 Astra Life. Very boring, very bland, but the boxes on them are okay on the whole. It's a proper auto, and it should last while you're the custodian of it. Bit of a manky steering wheel there. But yeah, proper auto box, General Motors style. And last but not least, Volvo. Now, some newer Volvos use the PowerShift box, which are nothing but trouble. So you want to find something like, now forgive me here because this is very boring, but something like an S40. I mean, look at that. It's only done 48,000 miles. You will look like a pensioner. There's no two ways about it, but it will last. 1.8 petrol, proper auto box, wishy-washy bluey green colour. Look at that, look. It will last, there are no two ways about it. Something like a C30, but I think that, yeah, you probably want to avoid those. The Geartronic box. S60, V40, that's the old shape one, isn't it? Something like a V40 if you need the practicality of an estate car, but they're not the prettiest of cars, are they? The 2.4 Geartronic, again, you'd only want to buy one of those if the gearbox has been serviced. I'd probably avoid those, to be honest. You could get an old C70. I'd probably say avoid those. So that is the trouble with buying an automatic here in the UK. There's just not much choice. As I've just demonstrated, we've narrowed this down from 500,000 cars available in the UK to automatics under £5,000. We've suddenly gone to 5,000 cars. And of those, more than half, I just wouldn't touch because they're either semi-autos or twin clutch. So you really need to be careful when looking at a used automatic, and at least try and stick to the ones that I've just recommended. So there we go. Thank you once again for watching. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done already. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'll leave the link below. If you've got any comments or questions, let me know below and I'll do my best to get back to you. Don't forget, check out HelloFresh. I'll leave the link below in the video description. And yeah, cheers guys. I'll see you next time.